What if the biggest barrier to your next role or your next chapter is your own mindset? Dr. Al Bramante blends psychology, hypnosis, NLP, and decades as a talent agent to help performers rise above self-sabotage. This episode is for artists and career changers who feel stuck, second-guess themselves, or want practical ways to rewire their thinking and move forward. Dr. Albert Al Bramante is a veteran talent agent and CEO of Bramante Artists, a psychology PhD, a professor, a certified hypnotist, and an NLP practitioner. He is the author of Rise Above the Script and helps performers overcome fear, imposter syndrome, and self-defeating patterns. Today, we trace Al's journey from book-loving kid in a sports family to psychology scholar, 9/11 crisis responder, professor, and talent agent. And we dig into the mindset tools he now uses to help creatives thrive. In this episode, we cover how early doubts and labels shaped Al's drive and how he rewrote them, what 9/11 crisis work taught him about resilience and purpose, why actors self-sabotage and the mindset shifts that unlock thriving, how hypnosis, NLP, and identity language help turn a struggling artist into a thriving artist.
Welcome, Al. I am so thrilled to have you on Your Next Success today. Thank you for being a part of our show.
Well, thank you so much, Caroline, for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, absolutely. I'd love to kind of get to know a little bit about your career story and how you ended up from then to now. I know, of course, now you are extremely talented. You help a lot of actors with their talent. You're an author. You have hypnosis things. So we're going to get to that of how people can work with you and how you work now. But let's dial it back to the beginning. Can you tell me a little bit about your childhood growing up, and were there any career things that you were interested in at that time?
Sure. Well, I was always an inquisitive child, and I was always kind of like the child that daydreamed a lot and was very nosy. And I think that kind of lead now to where I'm at in a sense, because just curious about people. I'm just curious about things. And I still daydream a lot too. I still meditate and daydream and all of that. So I started off, I was a very different type of child in my family. So I grew up in a predominantly blue collar family, athlete family. My brothers and my father were all into the athletic life. They were coaches. My oldest brothers, both of them were in football and very active in that. Football coaches, as well as playing football. I had no interest. I was a reader. I love to read. No interest in playing sports. And of course, naturally being the male in the family, they tried to suit me up. They tried to, put the ball in my hand and bring me out in the field and all of that, thinking that they were going to toughen me up, which good intentions just wasn't for me. So I think for me, I was so much more into reading. And that was a big thing. Reading was such an important, it still is. But even as a child, that was like my sanctuary. So I spent a lot of time in the library. Whereas, again, my family, maybe in the sports games or playing sports, I was in the library. So during this time, I started reading a lot of books when I was in high school about psychology, the human mind. One of my classic books that I read that got me into therapy, the idea of therapy, was a classic by David Burns called Feel Good. And it's kind of like a primer now on cognitive behavioral therapy when it was first coming out. And so I just became very interested in this. I was like, this is interesting and exciting. And so I read some more psychology books, and then I just decided that I was going to major in psychology. I made that determination by the end of my sophomore year in high school.
So your family, your dad, your brothers, they were very into sports. How about your mom? What was that influence? Did she like reading? What were her interests?
Her influence, my mom's influence kind of instilled the educator in me. For
Okay.
31 years, she was a school teacher. So she taught a combination of like kindergarten and first grade. So I think that's where the teacher side of me comes from. And also the coach, because like I said, my father and my older brother were football coaches. So I think combining the education and the coach kind of led me to some degree where I took after my family because
Absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
what instilled that. But I think my mom encouraged me, even like when I think my dad started to, when he realized that I wasn't going to be an athlete or in the sports. So they really encouraged me to thrive in school, in which I did. And the interesting thing about me was I really didn't awaken to my potential of like what I can do academically until I was in my junior year in high school. So I was always kind of
Okay.
like the B, C student. I never failed anything, but I was never like the ace, very rarely an ace in middle school and until I hit my junior year in high school. It was just interesting, like a switch just flipped in me that I became the BC student to like the A student overnight. And
Oh, wow.
throughout the rest of that time, I was just getting straight A's.
Were you also involved in any kind of extracurricular activities
100.
throughout your school? What were your interests in that
I
area
was
too?
involved very much in everything and everything, especially even in college. But I was like in high school, they had the Rotary Club, the Kiwanis Club. I was all involved in that, the drama club, the bait club, Future Business Leaders of
Yeah.
America. I was in that organization in high school. And then in college, I was in different charitable organizations, different community services, even Pledge of Fraternity.
Oh, wow. Had you always envisioned college as part of your plan? And what did you choose to major? How did you do that? Because I think that you ended up adding on.
Of course, it was always instilled to me to go to college because I was kind of a pioneer in that aspect because my oldest brother didn't do well in college. And then one of my other brother kind of dropped out of college initially. So I was the first in my immediate family to go to school. And it was always instilled to go to college. I mean, that was the one thing my family really was on. And I didn't necessarily feel like when I was first in high school, I probably didn't think I was going to thrive in college. It wasn't until, like I said, in my junior year when that switch was flipped that I was like really now looking forward to college. And not only just college, I wanted to be a PhD. That was like junior year in high school onwards. So I then went to college and I did well. I mean, I liked it. And one of the things about like with classes wise, even like the latter part of my high school years, the best teachers and professors that I've had were the most feared.
Yeah, the really strong, stern, high expectations teachers similarly. I wanted to do so well for them,
And
you know?
when I look back to, especially there are two teachers in high school, junior year English and my senior year chemistry teacher. People told me my senior year, when I, like, especially with chemistry, avoid this guy like the plague. That was told to me. This guy's in that year. And then, of course, because I wanted to go to college, the news came to me my junior year when my guidance counselor sat down and said, I hate to break it to you, but you're going to have to get chemistry. Now, most people took chemistry their junior year. I took it my senior year. So I was like, I got to do this. I was terrified because everyone was telling me to avoid this guy. And there was no way because he was really the only one that taught it that year. So
Yeah.
when I got in there, it turned out to be the best class of my high school studies.
Oh, wow.
I got A's, sometimes the only one in my entire class that received an A at the end of the remarking period. I had so much fun in that class, chemistry. And I almost went down that route for a major because I was like, this is a lot of fun. And
Yeah.
I think it's the analytical part of my brain. And that's why I think I was so attracted and drawn to that field. So then when I was in college, I majored in psychology, minored in communications. Each one of those departments had the professor you didn't want to get. And in both situations, I had no choice. Let me tell you, it was the best decision I've ever made.
Oh, wow.
They
That's
were
great. Yeah.
amazing. They really taught me a lot. I channel a lot of them even to this day. Yes, the classes weren't easy and up by a long shot. However, it was so enriching. Those are like my highlights of my college years, was those professors. And I took more classes with them towards the end too, when I was doing my end of my year.
What do you think was different for others having, maybe not so positive experiences and not enjoying it? What do you think was different from you versus them, your experience with these tough professors versus the
I
others?
think because I had high standards for myself towards the end, that I was like, okay, and I wasn't looking for the easy A, because consequently, I also took classes where people were telling me, this is the best professor you're going to have. And I thought I really wasn't impressed either.
Okay.
So I then started to get, well, maybe I should do the opposite of what people tell me what to do. And I think that's what really stood out for me. Plus, I learned so much in those classes. I cannot tell you how much information I learned when I was challenged. And of course, all of the research will tell you about learning is that when you learn the most when you're challenged. I thrive, but I just always have the mentality where it's like, was I scared? A little bit, but I kind of looked at the mentality where, look, I'm here and this is the best. So, now that I teach, I even encourage my students to run to those classes that people are telling you to avoid. Because I work a lot with nursing majors, and one of the classes that they're told to avoid like a plague is anatomy and physiology.
I think I'd want nurses that do well in that.
I would too, but I think the reason why they're running away from that is because the professor is very, very tough, supposedly.
Okay.
And very, has a high kind of like failure rate. And I kind of say, well, here's an alternative explanation to it. If I'm going to go to a nurse, I would want them to be working really hard. I'd want them to be in that hard anatomy class.
If they can get past that, they can take care of me.
Of course. And so that's like, if I were to go back, I probably would be running to that class myself. I'm going to take it just because I know I'm going to learn. So I think this is where a lot of that comes in. I think just the hard work and perseverance comes in, because not only did I learn a lot, but I got along so great with these professors.
Now, you mentioned you knew you wanted to get a PhD. Did you know anybody that had a PhD, or how did you even think that was possible?
Well, I mean, just from learning stuff, obviously when I was in high school, with the exception of maybe like a supervisor of a department, very rarely was anybody at least in a high school or secondary school.
Yeah.
But I think just the idea of having doctor by my name would be excellent.
Yeah.
And I did, as a kid, flirted with the idea of being a doctor. And even when my grandmother was alive, she was like, I wish, she told me she was nothing in the world for me but to become a doctor. Now,
well, you achieved that, just maybe not
in that way. Not in that way. But I think she would still be proud. I know that.
Yeah.
To this day, because I still have doctor by my, name, surname. But the thing that I think it was just about achievement, and I was really trying to improve a lot. So one thing I want to kind of go back to, I was born with a lot of health challenges. And initially, because I was pretty much a baby, I had a lot of breathing problems as an infant, a newborn. So one of my pediatricians had pulled my parents aside and said, we need to have a hard conversation with you. Your son is not rarely going to pass the mentality of a 10-year-old.
Oh, wow.
So you need to be prepared for that. And of course, thankfully, my parents didn't listen. I'm glad they didn't. And I thank them to this day for not listening. And I even had teachers who would sometimes tell my parents, like, don't expect much from Albert.
Wow.
And again,
and they refused to believe it, and you refused to believe it. And did you use that disbelief of others in your capabilities? Did you use that as like fuel and fire, or just ignored it?
I kind of both. I think I somewhat ignored it. Not necessarily think about applying it towards the end. Now, of course, I'm just like, yes, definitely. Yeah. Now here I am. And
Yeah, you
I
can
need to
do
I need to
anything.
prove these people wrong. Not from an anger standpoint, because I look at it like in hindsight now as a professional myself. This is again the early '80s, so that we didn't know too much about neuroplasticity and the brain and the brain
Yes.
growth. So
Yes.
I could have been quite showing signs of delayed development or developmental challenges that might have looked irreversible at the time. So I think that's where I don't hold any malice or any ill will towards the pediatricians or my parents. I could have easily been showing the signs of that. And even with my teachers, still a little slow, developmentally compared to my peers, at least physically. So on the surface, it could have shown that my results weren't so good. But one of my significant turning points, and really didn't hit me till a couple of years later, the first week of my seventh grade studies, my English teacher had called parents and all my teachers in for a meeting.
Oh.
And of course, the teachers didn't tell me what the meeting was for. So I found this out later, and that was because they didn't think that I was going to be equipped to handle a regular classroom, that I should be in a self-contained classroom. And my parents
Oh,
really
wow.
had to restrain themselves from cursing this teacher out and walking out on her. And so of course they pulled me out of her English class. They put me in the other English class, and that same year when we took the placement test for the next grade, I placed it to the honors section the next year.
Mm.
So that was kind of like my way of proving this teacher wrong.
And your parents knew you. They
Of
saw
course.
greatness in you. They believed in the
And-
best possibilities. And yeah, interesting, because maybe she was trying to help, or maybe she was just,
Yeah,
because
you don't.
I feel like, yeah, some of that helping children to get the educational needs that meet them to help them overcome, I get that. But for her to just be like, we got it. Back when you grew up and I grew up, it wasn't as helpful as now with like 504 plans
Yeah.
and individual education plans and actually supporting students. Then it was like, yeah, there was this whole other classroom of kids that I didn't understand why they weren't sitting with
Yeah.
us.
And nowadays that's
Yeah.
important. I mean, we did have IEPs. I did have the IEP for a number of years in school. Now, of course, that teacher was fired a couple of years later.
Maybe she just didn't want to work. Who
so
knows?
I don't,
Yeah.
that's not, but I look at that
Yeah.
now that was motivation for me. I kind of use that as a motivation. Like, oh yeah, I'm going to prove you wrong. And
Mm.
that's what I did. And at the time, I didn't consciously was like 12, 13. So I really didn't have that
Yeah.
insight yet. And then when I was in high school, I think something just flipped the switch. Where I was like, okay, you know what? I can do this. And then my senior year, I took AP honors classes and, received A's in those. So that's when I knew, I can do
And
college.
when did this, was your junior year when you were introduced to the psychology class, or which year did that fall in?
No, I didn't take any psychology classes in high school. They didn't offer them.
Oh,
But
wow.
I
but how did you know you wanted
because
it
I was reading.
you were interested?
I was reading.
Oh.
And I read the book David Burns, so it was like my favorite
Yes.
book. And then, of course, I was reading other psych books, in the library, and this became something very interesting in me. Plus, I was also in a
cool.
peer mentoring group after school, confidential,
Very
and that
cool.
what really got
Yeah.
me into it,
Oh, wow.
working with other people. And, I have been doing it ever since. And I think because my idols in high school were other academics. It was not like other kids. So I was very much into the academic. And so that's why I think really I was so bent on getting a PhD. And and I'm glad I did it. One of my proudest moments in my life was walking on that stage and I wrote getting an honor.
Absolutely. And what did you study? What was your dissertation focus?
So my dissertation, because I also work with actors, was on self-defeating behavior in performing artists.
Okay. How did you choose that?
So I chose that because after I received my master's degree, I kind of got back in touch with the creative side of me. I did take some acting classes in college, and I was in a drama club. And so I kind of pursued a little bit of acting myself. But I realized I loved working with creatives. more so than other academics. It was like I feel more aligned with actors.
Okay. And then help me understand the influence of around the time you're getting your master's degree and maybe doing some of your PhD work, but 9/11 happened. So, what was the influence on being in that area,
I
9/11, and this psychology interest?
well, I first of all, my heart goes out, and that should never have happened. But at the same time, it also launched everything that I've started doing. I still think I would have been in the same place, but that kind of catapulted everything. Because after 9/11, I got recruited to help do some crisis intervention counseling for people I knew. And so I started doing that. And then I started meeting other actors. And then I landed my first job for like the Red Cross, which I worked in social services for a little while. Then I moved on to the Mental Health Association in New York City. I did that for a year. It was a grant funded 9/11 position doing crisis intervention. And then I, was laid off because the grant ended on that one. So I had to look for another job. I consequently got hired to be adjunct professor at the time at a community college because they were so impressed with my work around 9/11 that they hired me to teach, some introductory classes at this community college. I wound up staying there for 10 years. And it had a huge impact on my life.
How did you handle regaining your energy while spending your days or a significant part of your day trying to help others cope with 9/11 and the after effects? How did you recover so that didn't take a toll on your mental
It did
health?
a little bit, not going to lie. I mean, when I worked for the Mental Health Association in New York City, they really took good care of us. So they gave us like a generous vacation, like 4 weeks out of the year, which is
Wow.
considered rare, in most cases. And they also had at least once a week, it was mandatory that we go and do some group counseling, which I thought was brilliant, now looking back.
Yeah.
So it was that,
Yes.
plus, just doing self-care. Plus, now I also had my interest in acting. So I think that kind of balanced it out to where I could focus on so many other things when I wasn't at the job.
Got you.
Because there were times where there were some certain things that would tug at the heartstrings, for me, when you're dealing with people in such immense throes of grief and trauma.
Yeah.
So, but what kept me grounded was the self-care, the acting. And I realized after about a year or two that I really don't have the interest or passion for being a performer or the discipline that was really required, looking back in hindsight. But I didn't want to leave completely because I love actors. So that's where I kind of transitioned to supporting them. And then that went to representing them. So 2004, I started my first company. In 2005, I was like, I want to go back for a PhD. I'm halfway there. Now, in 2001, before 9/11, that's when I graduated with my master's, I had applied to 4 PhD programs locally. I underestimated how competitive PhD programs are. So even though I had a very high GPA, I wrote a recommendation, I had research experience, I didn't get into those 4 programs. So now I was kind of facing my own little identity crisis because this is my first time in 24 years that September was going to roll around and I wasn't going to be in school. I was 24 at the time.
Oh, interesting. That's so interesting because what you wanted and your plan would have been starting your PhD in September. However, you didn't, so you were working, but then that made you available to be supporting these people through 9/11.
Yes.
Wow. It's like, God's plan or universe's plan, whatever somebody wants to say, but like
totally.
that plan is different and better. Like, even when we have a challenge or something, it ends up being in hindsight, oh, I'm so glad that happened. And, not that anybody could say I'm glad 9/11 happened, but I'm glad 9/11 happened because it helped your ability to fuel this passion and get this this work.
One
Wow. That's interesting.
100%. And I think that just kind of like was a domino effect.
Yeah. Yeah. Really setting things in motion for who you became and who you are now. Okay. So then you reapplied then in this like before 2005 and then got in and then, but now you had been working. Did you stay working while also getting your PhD or
I
did you,
sure did.
how'd that work? Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
No,
Yeah.
like full transparent, the PhD program that I was in was online. So that
Okay.
made
Okay.
things tremendously easier.
But still a lot of work.
No doubt. And I will be the first to tell you that if anybody thinks that online education is easier, boom, you're going to be mistaken on that one.
Yeah.
I think it was sometimes even more challenging than that the brick and mortar face-to-face program would have been.
Absolutely. Even in 2005, because it wasn't like the world wasn't necessarily as set up for these virtual interactions as now. And so,
yeah, I mean, looking back in hindsight, we had no virtual interaction. Everything was on your own time. It was all
isolated.
It was very
a little.
discussion boards, papers, and very little interaction with professors. Very little.
Oh.
And
even the support of other students. So that
it was just email.
You really had to want it. Yeah.
It took a lot of discipline, and I had to struggle with that in the beginning. And I'm very disciplined. But at that time, it was like really a struggle because you have to keep your own schedule. There's nobody there over your shoulder reminding you things where at least in your class you're going. No. So I had those challenging issues. Now, the interesting thing with that, with learning to balance both was a challenge because I was teaching, starting my company, and working with actors. So one thing I noticed when I started working with actors, and even when I was teaching, there was a lot of self-sabotage happening.
Okay.
And that's what led me.
But you recognized it, or now looking back, you realize it?
I may not have called it exactly what I would refer to it as now, but I was noticing things that were just like confusing the heck out of me. Like, why are so many actors telling me that they want to work, and yet their actions are telling me so many things? And why were so many students just giving up without even putting a fight into their education? So I was like, this is something a good idea to study for a PhD dissertation. Now, I was initially going in for clinical psychology. There were a couple of challenges there. Now, this is back in the early to mid 2000s. So online education wasn't exactly viewed as it is today. And part of to get a clinical PhD, what we have to do is a 750-hour practicum followed by a 2,000-hour internship.
Oh, wow.
So there was no way I had time for any of that. I would have to give up my job and my business if I was going to do that. So that was obstacle number one. Obstacle number two, because it wasn't taken seriously, I was kind of almost getting laughed at when I was going to the internship interviews. Maybe not explicitly, but I could tell implicitly, like, you're an online.
Like they didn't respect the online part of it. They maybe thought it was a joke, and in reality, it was a lot of hard work.
And I was literally told, like, several times, we're giving preference to people in, a traditional PhD program. And I'm not so okay. So what am I supposed to do? And then right around this time, there's an opening at my college. I was an adjunct for several years at the previous college I taught at. There was now an opening for a full-timer.
Oh, wow.
Full-time position.
Yeah.
3 openings, actually. So, because 3 people in my department had retired. So I put my application in and I got the job. So now I'm at a crossroads where, okay, how am I going to do a full-time job and a full-time internship? First of all, I can't even find a site.
Yeah.
So I came to the kind of decision, which is thankfully I did it now, where it's like, I'm going to switch out of clinical. Okay. And I'm now going to just get the education and research, component, because I was an educator. So all I needed to do was like take 3 other extra classes and just finish my dissertation. I said, I'm going to just do that.
Yeah, it's a
Get
win.
over. It's a win, major win, and I'm done. So that's what I did. So I consider myself a clinical psychologist by training. not by practice. Um,
Got you.
so, and it's the best thing I've ever done. Like I said, everything works out for a reason. I mean, I will speak that from the rooftops now.
Yeah, in hindsight, right? I know looking back, everything that happened, I'm so glad it happened that way. But looking forward, I still struggle with
Oh, of
trusting that
course.
it's gonna be okay when I look back later, right? Because I'm just like, how does it make sense? Like, I know, thank you for setting this up and that up and that up and that. And I'm glad I got laid off because of this. And I'm glad I did this because of that. And yet, I want to get to the point where I have that same forward thinking trust, like, I know it's going to be awesome. So God is in control of
Yeah,
everything and everything is
just
good.
it's sometimes
And I'm working on
struggling.
it. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so you get your PhD and you have learned how to be disciplined enough to have a full-time job and had gotten the PhD and you have your own businesses also. So I guess that discipline was great for entrepreneurship as well. And you help actors. And so how does that bring us to what I guess when did the whole neuro-linguistic programming NLP kind of interest and hypnosis, where did that fit into your
I
timeline?
think a lot of it um, started to um, transpire when I knew that clinical psych wasn't going to be really in the cards for me anymore. Um,
Okay.
where it was, I could,
And explain what NLP is for those
yeah,
that
sure.
don't
So
know.
it's neurolinguistic programming. It's more of a system of use of like optimizing yourself by using language and using other tools, like other psychological tools to, rewire your nervous system. Like
Mm.
coming from a computer standpoint, like reprogramming your brain, reprogramming
Yeah.
your mind. And what's the interesting thing about NLP is it started out of like, Virginia Satir, Milton Erickson, Fritz Perls, who are icons in the psychology movement. And so there's an
Yeah.
application of, psychology there. And I think what really I like about I didn't really notice I was interested in NLP. I didn't realize it until like looking back in hindsight because in high school, well, not in high school, when I was going for my master's degree, I took some classes in marriage and family therapy, and the models that we were taught were solution focused counseling, which are very quick, brief, and unconventional therapies, which was Virginia Satir, work of Virginia Satir and Milton Erickson, who, even though they may not consider themselves NLP practitioners, but their work led to the discovery of NLP.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think I knew that I wanted to do this type of work beforehand because it's very quick, it's very solution focused rather than years of therapy.
Yeah. And so how do you incorporate that now as you work with actors, find talent, and support
Well,
them?
I think just helping rewire the mindset. So, like, coming from the place of self-doubt and self-sabotage, which often comes in there. Changing your identity as an actor. Rather than, referring to yourself as a struggling or starving artist, it's all about as a thriving artist, and
Oh.
the language that we use and the identity that we use and refer to ourselves, it makes a huge deal. And I think even going back in college, if I looked at myself as just the average C student, I don't know if I would have achieved what I did.
Mm.
It certainly wouldn't have made me an honor student, if I didn't believe that and didn't take that identity into play. So I think that's sort of like where that comes into. So it's more rapid and it's more, again, solution focused. So
I see.
and that's what kind of led me down that route in a sense.
And you've written a book. I think it's Rise Above the
Yes.
Script. Is that what? So does that give more insight or tell us what Rise Above the Script is
So
about?
it kind of is loosely based out of my doctoral dissertation work.
Oh.
And so I did, again, like I said, I did the doctoral dissertation on Rise Above the Script, and which was again dealing with self-sabotage. And so what the book kind of deals with, first of all, it's kind of like my way of making the work that I did for my PhD into a more relatable format. That can make people really identify with it rather than just looking at the PhDs being very technical. So I wanted to take the information and results that I found and kind of put it in a readable format, and kind of so I utilize both research and my own experiences in the book. Like human performance, I looked at I discussed personality factors, how conscientiousness is extremely important. How the company we keep is very important.
Yeah. Yeah. So, how do you work with people now, aside from still being a professor and teaching? How do you serve people, or how do people find you, and what would they find you to get help with?
A lot of it is just rewiring the mindset, coming from surviving to thriving, and unlocking any blocks, or removing for any blocks that are holding you back. So, like, kind of like the thesis of my book and my dissertation, or my main point behind it is that we can sometimes get in our own way and be our own worst enemy. And sometimes be extremely harsh on ourselves, and rather than what's needed, rather than other people. Sometimes we're the ones that are hard on ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm big on authentic success. And to me, I say authentic success is however you define it. So, Albert, how do you define authentic success for you in this
Authentic
moment?
success means living in the moment and doing, your own thing. Now, success can be looked differently from everybody else. And I don't, a lot of times people look at success as conventional things, having a job, having income. But I look at it like, are you living your dream? Are you happy? Are you doing what you love? Are you doing what you're passionate about? That is what we mean by authenticity. It's about doing what you want to do, not because somebody else wants you to do something, or not because you think it's the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to do? And what makes you passionate every morning?
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree. What advice would you have for someone who is struggling right now or unsure of if what they're doing is what they really love to do?
The main thing is, first, we would explore, what do you want to do? What do you love? What gets you up in the morning? And how can you do that, more of that? So the first thing would be really discovering what you want. And again, I'm not talking about what other people want you to do. What do you want to do? And then we would kind of look at, what are your past achievements? Because a lot of times when we're in the midst of struggling, we delete or we downplay our achievements. So it's okay to brag. It's okay to, I call it like the humble brag. You can brag about yourself.
Yeah. Be proud of
what you
who you are and what you've become. Yes, yes. Well, definitely. Well, it has been such a joy to have had this conversation with you. I am so genuinely appreciative of you sharing this part of your story. And we'll put some links in the show notes for anybody that wants to connect with Albert and be in touch. And really, if you're an actor, you're struggling, you need to find something great to do, you need to work on your mindset, Al is your guy. So thank you so much, Al, for being part of Your Next Success.
And thank you so much for having me.
Al reminds us that the stories we repeat become the scripts we live. When we change the language, we change the identity, and the outcomes follow. Think better, choose better, and create your next success. Al, thank you for sharing your story and tools with us. To connect with Al or grab his hypnosis recordings, visit albertbramante.com and follow Dr. Albert Bramante on Instagram. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow, rate, review the podcast, and share it with someone who needs a boost today. Here's to your next success.